Okay, so it's 6 o'clock, and we'll go ahead and get started. And if you would join me with the we did the call to order, opening prayer, and pledge of allegiance. So if you'll stand with the prayer, please. Lord, thank you for bringing us together tonight. Please bless the people that are in this room and our other citizens that aren't able to attend. Bless these ladies that came all the way from Raleigh and give them safe travels back as they go back after our meeting tonight. And let us all listen to what they have to say and figure out the best way to proceed forward with what they're presenting to us. Thank you for our town staff and all of our departments that we have that work for us. And in your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty.
Okay, so the first section is public comment, and there's no one signed up for public comment tonight, so we'll move to the adoption of the agenda and consent items. And does anybody have anything they want to move off? There's nothing really on it. But are we good with making a motion?
So move.
Okay, that's a motion to adopt. Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so there's consent items are taken care of. Appointments, recognitions, and presentations will be next. And Winters Revenue is going to present the storm order master plan project update for us, and probably be easier at this podium over here, I would guess. And I think they said it was like 4 hours, so if you need to take a break somewhere along the line, let me know.
Not 4 hours. But good evening, everyone. I'm just going to introduce them. So we have Withers Revenue here tonight to give us a stormwater master plan project update. We have Amanda Hollingsworth and Emily Petruni. Okay, wanted to pronounce that right, with Withers Revenue. And again, they'll present an update of the stormwater master plan project we've been working on for a while now. Just to give a really brief history, in 2023, the town of Swansboro was awarded $400,000 for a stormwater planning grant through the NCDEQ Local Assistance for Stormwater Infrastructure Investment Program. The town selected Withers Revenue to lead the development of the stormwater master plan. The project began in 2024 with data collection and stormwater mapping of the town and is now in its final stages with the stormwater master plan draft report. So Withers Revenue will provide a little bit more detail and background information on the project, as well as details on the draft report. So, you guys are welcome.
Good evening, everyone. All right, well, thank you for having us. As Rebecca had introduced, my name is Amanda Hollingsworth. We are from Withers Revenue, and tonight we are going to be presenting an update on the ongoing stormwater master plan for the town of Swansboro. All right, so tonight, as Rebecca stated, we'll introduce ourselves, go into a little bit of project background, discuss what the project scope included, summarize the tasks completed thus far, summarize the remaining tasks of the project as we work to close out the scope of work and work through closeout of the grant, and then kind of leave time available for questions that you guys might have after review of the slides. And I believe that some of the report was provided to you before in the agenda. So as mentioned, my name is Amanda Hollingsworth. I was the project manager for this project. I'm going to be the licensed professional engineer that will be signing the final report. And then with me today, I have Emily Petruni. She is one of our water resources professionals and was really involved in a lot of the modeling and engineering calculations. And she was also involved the entire time I was out on maternity leave for a short duration of this multi-year project. And so she's definitely seen the entire thing through and can help provide some additional background as needed. So as mentioned, this project is a grant-funded project. The town had applied for the grant through the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality Local Assistance for Stormwater Infrastructure Investment Program. Again, this was not a loan. It was a grant for $400,000 for specifically stormwater planning. With that, and I apologize that our company green is a little bit difficult to see on the screen here. Prior to this grant, the town has previously invested time and effort in stormwater-related management efforts. In 2017, there was the 9-element plan that was produced and approved by the state, which really focuses on water quality. And so there was recommendations and efforts provided in that plan to focus on steps that the town could take to make sure that the waterways and the nutrients going into the waterways were in compliance and kind of best practices forward from an environmental quality standpoint. The town was then a participant in the Resilient Coastal Community Program, which RCCP, they went through a 2-phase project, phase 1 and phase 2, which included more of a study, summary, resilience recommendation phase, and then the town applied to get grant money to move to phase 3 of that program, which included kind of preliminary design of the Water Street Drainage Improvement Project, which was stormwater quantity, pipe upsizing, as well as a water quality treatment mechanism as well as part of that. So that was completed in 2023. The town had then moved forward to apply for grant funding to get that implemented. And just with the funding limitations of the RCCP program, they just weren't able to fund everything that they had kind of funded through concept design. So it was not selected to move forward with implementation. So there has been a little bit of a history of trying to look at 1, quantity and then 2, quality of the stormwater and floodwaters here in town. So for this specific project, there was kind of 3 main purposes. One, in a majority of the project time and budget went to this, was collecting the stormwater inventory of the town. So it was basically getting a surveyor out there, understanding what's in the ground, what pipes are there, what inlets are there, what manholes are there, any of that infrastructure, because it was not documented really in any way or in a good digital way for the town staff to use to be able to understand what was going on and how all the stormwater was connected. Then using that data, the next phase was to do an analysis to determine if the stormwater infrastructure and the pipes had the capacity to handle the necessary storm events and the basic engineering storm events for to make sure that we're passing and roads are clear during a minimum of 10-year storm. And then through that identification of how the existing system is operating, identified areas to develop proposed concept for, to then suggest proposed implementation and concepts to fix the solutions to fix some of the identified problems. So again, this is very difficult to read, but as stated, kind of we went through data collection, existing conditions, proposed conditions, the summary report. The report was reviewed, and then we'll be going to DWI for review, closeout, and plan adoption. So we're going to hit each of these steps in more detail. So as stated, the data collection and assessment, this was really the biggest part of the project scope. It took place mostly through 2024. We started with public input and kind of a public introduction meeting in March of 2024. So we had sent out a digital survey asking residents where they're seeing issues, asking what they would be willing to see as far as an implementation standpoint. We had an in-person meeting where people were able to mark up maps where they have existing flooding problems and concerns. So we collected that data, and then this also included the survey effort where we had the surveyor out in the field. And the final product of that is a town-wide comprehensive database of all the stormwater infrastructure that was evaluated by the surveyor. And it really is a large percentage of the network, unless for some reason there was, something, a manhole that someone saw on someone's private property behind a fence that wasn't able to get access to, or if a manhole had been sealed and just literally couldn't pull it open. But with that, the town now has a digital version of the entire stormwater network. That includes what's in the ground, so the pipe size, the shape, how deep is it in the ground, what is the material. If the surveyor saw anything that was of concern from a condition standpoint, that was noted at the time. And so the town has that, and they've incorporated it within their fire emergency management ArcGIS online system for town use. And then with that as well, we had gone through and identified kind of mini watersheds and delineated the drainage basin so that way if a maintenance representative from the town had gone out to an area and they had a problem, they could look at that data and see, okay, this is where the water is coming from, this is where it's going, this is the drainage area and the surrounding area that this pipe is potentially impacting, and then this is kind of the end point where it's leaving the system and entering a river or some other water body. So it really gives the town a really great source of data that they can use moving forward to make informed decisions of what's going on and what is kind of causing some of these problems. From that, we took the data as we went into early 2025 and put it into an engineering model. As far as where we selected to model, again, we were kind of limited on budgetary constraints from the grant after we'd done the full data collection, and so had focused on trying to model as much of the town as we could, again, at a planning level, and then I tried to identify large areas of continuous system. So kind of trying to pick an alpha point, an end of a system, and seeing what was going to be kind of the greatest bang for our buck, what can we model the most, get the most amount of area of town that we can, kind of just with the budgetary constraints that is the reality of a grant-funded project. So we put that into the model and ran different storm events to identify which pipes are doing well, which areas are not doing well, specifically in at least a 10-year storm event. So we have kind of the Halls Creek area identified, and we have a lot of the system there. And then we have the downtown historic district as well that was modeled. And then with those areas that are discharging to kind of the more coastal boundaries, we did account for tides or in larger storm events if there was any type of storm surge as well. So with that, we were able to identify, yes.
Can I ask you a quick question? In regards to your public survey data that you referred to in the last two slides, do you remember what number of participants that you get with your survey feedback and data?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I might be able to look while Emily takes over the presentation, and I'll get back to you. I think we might have it written in the report.
Thank you.
Yep. So with that, we've identified the problem areas. I think there was any of those little kind of purple, pink flags that you see popping up was an area of the system that was not meeting sort of that baseline level of, we would expect from an engineering service kind of standpoint. As you can see, there's quite a lot of those little pink flags that are sticking up in the map, which really just says that a lot of the system is undersized for the amount of rainfall that we're estimating is coming to those systems, which is not completely unheard of, especially in like an older system where contractors and when towns were developed just kind of put pipes in based on what they had. So with this, we talked with town staff. We looked at which areas had the worst problems, which areas had the highest flooded depths based on the model, which areas were serving kind of the largest drainage areas, so potentially could have the greatest impact if there was a proposed solution. Worked through where there had been ongoing complaints, input from town staff, and then that kind of led us into the concept portion of this design.
All right. So following the review of our potential areas of concern that were kind of those pink flags on the previous slide, the town, with guidance from our team, then selected 3 areas for proposed conceptual improvements to address the design storm, which was a 10-year, 24-hour storm event. To begin our assessment, we created a proposed conceptual model, which was created by duplicating our existing conditions model and then adjusting it by including some of those proposed concepts that we would then bring to town staff, discuss the model and what changes we've made, and if they wanted any alterations, we'd then kind of make more changes to the model until we had that final deliverable for those proposed concepts. As you'll notice in the following slides, we made efforts to keep proposed concepts within existing rights-of-way and drainage easements. And you'll also notice on the slides, preliminary cost estimates are also noted for each concept area. I'll note specifically for the costs that they are based currently on based on the date of the report and are not considering costs of inflation in the future. So they would need to be reevaluated if they're considered for design in the future. So for concept design 1 in a Forest Brook neighborhood, I'll let you read all of the numbers on the slide exactly. But so this is in Forest Brook neighborhood. For existing conditions, this area currently has 15 and 18-inch pipes, which from our model, we believe to be are undersized. Because they're undersized, they are lacking the capacity to convey that design storm event, the 10-year, 24-hour I mentioned, which is resulting in roadway inundation. So for this concept design, we have proposed upgrading the existing infrastructure to larger and dual barrel pipes across the neighborhood to increase the system's capacity. And that estimated cost is $935,000. For concept design 2, this is located north of Old Hammock Road along Holly Lane. This area has an open channel that is in the backyards between Dogwood Lane and Phillips Drive with discharge pipes that, again, from our model, we believe are undersized. And similarly, the pipe that is crossing Holly Lane that is just west of Dogwood Lane is also appears to be undersized, resulting in roadway inundation in that area as well. For this concept area, we are proposing to extend the trunk line along Holly Lane to a new outfall with larger pipes. We also are proposing to redirect some of the flow that's going to that existing ditch between Dogwood and Phillips to a new system on Dogwood Lane. And that estimated cost is at $2,474,000. All right. Last and third concept design area, number 3, is located in the town's historic district, downtown. So this network, again, is, we believe, to be undersized. But not just that it's undersized. This area obviously is much closer to the coastline. So it's also experiencing some tailwater conditions, we believe. So those tailwater conditions are established by the White Oak River and Hawkins Creek. So when wind and storm surges raise the water levels, water is then being pushed back into these areas, which reduces drainage capacity. So then when you combine that with heavy rain events, it's causing flooding to persist until those water levels can go down. So for this concept, we have proposed upsizing the pipes to increase some of the capacity and to capture additional runoff along Waterfront and Church Streets. We have the proposed improvements are ending at the junction boxes just before the outfall pipes, and this is due to CAMA outfall permitting limitations. But because of these limitations, we are proposing doghouse manholes that will intentionally flood, so that way it can relieve some of the surcharging in the system. Also included in this area is the previously mentioned Water Street design that is from the RCCP project. And we also do have some recommendations that are specifically associated with this project that will be in a future slide. Moving on to our summary report. At the conclusion of the existing and proposed modeling phases, we compiled all of the findings into a formal master plan report. This report includes our methodology, our results, and the project recommendations. Also in the report, we developed, with input from town staff, a prioritization scoring matrix to rank not only the concept designs that we just discussed, but also any future stormwater-related projects that the town might want to assess in the future. The prioritization criteria, as you can see in the table, include condition of infrastructure, project cost, severity of flooding, and the project drainage area served. And each criterion was assigned a weighted value to represent its relative importance, as you can see by the percentages. So here is the summary of the prioritization after each was ranked against the previous criteria. Based on the ranking, concept design 3 was ranked as number 1 top priority. And with that, I will hand it back to Amanda for recommendations.
So in addition to those 3 concept designs and associated costs, we also have put together some recommendations within the report. I'll kind of quickly hit on some of these there. So the first one is the recommendation to continue to invest in maintaining the stormwater asset inventory that was developed. Again, there was a lot of money and time that went into developing this, and with the data, as the town is making improvements or changing pipes, anything like that, it's just a recommendation that one, right now it's being hosted on the network with the fire departments, online GIS infrastructure, but again, as new town staff are on, just investing in making sure that staff is trained to be able to update the database. Pretty much that is just investing in the future of just making sure that data is maintained as it's going forward, whether that's town staff updating it, requiring if someone's doing a project to provide you that information so that way it could be updated. Again, just because you have all this great data now to make decisions based off of, the recommendation is to try to maintain it the best you can by getting the new data as things are being changed within town, as you're getting new development, trying to have developers provide information. That way the data could be maintained. The second is an emergency flood response and pumping plan within the Kima communities for major storm events. The state does allow you to have a pre-approved pumping plan to discharge into state waters. That way, basically you just put together a plan saying, oh, if the water's getting to this depth at this location, we can move forward. We already have this plan in place where the state kind of knows your procedures and approach to kind of give you that quick stamp in case there is some type of an emergency. They already know your protocol and procedures to pump the water from a flooded intersection and discharge where you don't have to worry about some of these, additional CAMA permits or issues that we come into the kind of on the day-to-day, sunny day flooding issues. Additionally, continuing to, as some of these concepts are developed or if additional, funds towards water quality are identified, continuing to focus on some of the previous plans as well with the 9-element plan for watershed restoration, some of the ongoing resilience recommendations that were identified in the RCCP project. Again, this is kind of the calculations on this focus on water quantity a lot more than the water quality. And we just, in the plan too, want to recommend that all of these ongoing plans are continued to look at holistically as decisions are made moving forward. This number 4 item is related more to the downtown area, that when concepts are implemented and developed, there is a recommendation to potentially look into doing some type of backflow prevention or outfall protection mechanism on the outfall pipe, knowing that it's going to be very, very difficult from a permitting standpoint to get any outfall pipes downtown upsize, which is really kind of just restricting how your water is getting out. By having the backflow prevention there, the one thing is it just really needs to be done during design to make sure that the amount of force that is needed to open anything that's preventing the sound from coming in, that it's just done during that concept or actual design phase where everything's looked at a lot more detail. You can really look into the specs of that particular technology. Again, just the fact that it is very dependent upon the force of the water that's potentially pushing out, make sure it's opening at the appropriate time. So that's a recommendation we didn't include in our cost because it really needs to be looked at during the final design down there for anything in that kind of Water Street. concept 3 area. Additionally, we have the ranked kind of concepts, at least the 3 identified in this plan. The recommendation is to continue to have formalized capital improvement plans for stormwater, is that it does assist sometimes when you're scoring for grants. If you have an adopted CIP for the stormwater projects, that you can kind of get additional points from the grant funding standpoint, and then continue to identify and pursue stormwater funding opportunities would be that final recommendation. So looking at the project as a whole, from a remaining effort standpoint, we are currently in the draft report phase. We have gone through a town review, and that's why we thought it was a great time to kind of give that update too before we move forward with this next step, where it would be submitting the draft to DWI at the state for their review. One, they'll make sure it's in compliance with the grant funding that they provided us to make sure that everything that we produced matches up with what we said we were going to do for the money. And they'll provide any comments to us on the report. We would make those changes, and then after DWI approves, the town would then bring it to you all to adopt the plan. At that point, we would move forward with closeout paperwork for the grant to kind of officially close out the grant from a paperwork standpoint, and all of that needs to be done by the end of this calendar year. As far as future effort in obtaining funding for finalized designs, I know in the draft report that I believe was provided as part of the agenda, that section is still working through that to make sure we give a little bit more detailed grant funding opportunities. We have identified some consistent funding at the state level that for anything that is water quality component. So that Water Street design has a water quality component. It makes it a lot easier to apply for some of these other grants. None of the state grants necessarily are great for, $1 million construction funds, mostly because this grant changes really year to year. I would say over the last 3 years, the bucket of money that we're pulling from changes. It was Golden Leaf for a couple of years ago. Then there was some construction funds in this LASSI program. This year, it's currently in an HMGP program. So there is money out there, just the bucket that it's in, especially at the state level, tends to change year to year. There is also opportunities where if you're working with state representatives, they can potentially earmark money as well for some of these improvements. And then there's also federal dollars that are options. Specifically, I know we've talked to staff about like a DOT build grant. But even with that, again, it's really, what we're going to say today as far as the funding opportunity is going to change even 6 months from now, depending on how federal funding goes and what department it goes to or what programs they decide to give the pockets of money to. So all that to say that in our draft, we are working to expand that a little bit to give some more detail and resources to staff to track and identify grants, but just even with that, knowing that the report could be outdated if someone picked it up, 2 or 3 years from now, knowing that the pockets of money and where the money is kind of coming from a grant perspective could change over those next few years. So with that, that was our update, and we really just kind of want to open it for questions. And to follow up on your one question about the public input, with my quick scan standing up here, I did not see us mention the specific number of public input participants that we had. I know we had both the in-person and then also some additional surveys filled out. So that is something that we can double check, verify, get back to town staff, and then also make a note to add in as we're doing these final draft revisions. So yeah. Now I think on one of the slides, I'm always saying we had like a quick summary number. I don't know if it's in percentages. So yeah, I guess with that, while we're kind of looking at that, is there any other questions that you guys had about the study or what you guys have reviewed before today's presentation?
So when we start implementing this, you do it in phases, I guess, starting with the most needed, which would be 3, and then move to 2, and then 1. How long would it take to, if we were to get the funding for it? I mean, that's a major amount of money for us to try to get. How long would it take to, to complete the project?
You'd be looking at a couple of years. I mean, even if we were identifying funding today, I know by the time you do the grant application process, even some of them, if you're applying, let's say in the spring, they're reviewing through the summer, you're finding out later in the year. So that's, the 1 year approximately of application. With design, specifically in these areas, I mean, we could probably get to bid in about maybe less than like a year would probably be a good estimate. Again, specifically if you're thinking downtown, obviously even half that project has some preliminary design done. The other areas also with the design, we didn't do subsurface utility investigation. A lot of the elevations are, using engineering judgment, but there could be stuff out there that during design you'd have to kind of pivot the design slightly. So you'd probably have like a year of design between doing site characterization, getting environmental out there, double checking all the engineering calculations and getting it to the CDs. And then you would even have to move into construction, which you're probably looking, over a year on that, depending on the area and how it was potentially phased.
Do you assist us in getting the grant money, or do we do that ourselves?
I think it depends on the scale of the grant. To be honest, I know that the town has been looking at doing stuff on their own, but I think, we have the ability to assist on certain grants, but I would just say that too, it varies depending on the grant, and the higher dollar grant opportunities tend to be more robust grant applications. Whereas if there is something that's a little bit of a smaller pocket of money that's maybe done through an organization through North Carolina, for example, the North Carolina Nickel WIF, the Land and Water Fund, I think they try to really make it easy for staff to do it without having to hire somebody to do it, where I know that one it needs a water quality component, but that is a sort of, you meet with them January through March, they come on site with you, they have manuals for their application. So it really depends on the grant and how specific the grant application requires. If it's a federal funding, they usually require a benefit cost analysis, which tends to be a little bit more tricky to get out to work the way you need the numbers to look when you submit it. So kind of depends.
And one other question. So the last time we had this stormwater update, was it like 2017? Is that what you were saying in that? Or when's the last time we had a stormwater update to our, do we have any idea when the last time was?
Yeah, I don't think there was a full stormwater master plan. There's just been components related to the stormwater. Okay. So with the 9 element, it is watershed based, so it definitely is looking kind of town wide. But I know a lot of that was, looking at stream restoration, trying to make sure that the recommendation would be to not implement or do things that you're going to have a lot of, sediment carrying nutrients getting into the waterways. A lot of recommendations kind of focused on best practices to maintain the water quality.
But it sounds like we're in need of it, for sure, of a stormwater update plan.
Yeah, so there's not an existing plan that this is an update to. This is very much like the first one, but there has been other studies that are related that we did reference in our document to make sure that, again, every piece kind of focused on something very specific prior to this that we wouldn't want to lose or ignore as we looked at our study.
Amanda, do you have a timeline when you think that this is going to be, we're going to have the final draft on that?
We should have a final draft like within the next 2 weeks. We were going to wait for any comments from today, but the hope was that we would be submitting to DWI as we got into, I think it was like April 10th, I think was the date that we were shooting for. I don't want to say that that's the hard and fast date, but I think we were trying to have today's meeting and then still have another 2 weeks or so to finalize the draft.
Can I ask, in your 3 designs, you annotate the number of stormwater structures that you recommend replacement or installation. Just for clarity, how do you define a stormwater structure? Is that an inlet or a manhole, or is that some other item as well?
Yes, so it's instead of separating if it was an inlet or a manhole, more on the labeling, it's really any of those junctions where the pipes are coming in. So that is really summarizing the manholes or the inlets, and specifically in the older systems, like during design, we might determine that something actually is in good condition, or maybe it was a newer and had been replaced and wouldn't be needed. But especially at the planning level, the general assumption is that anything along this stretch of pipe would most likely need to be replaced from a condition, and making sure it has the same lifespan as the pipes you're putting into the ground.
Amanda, can you explain that, the dog house system that was shown for the downtown area?
Yeah, so with that, the thought is, so we have the pipe that's going out to the water that we're not able to upsize due to camera permitting. And we've talked to environmental staff. This is, I mean, obviously a issue that all coastal communities are having, and that their pipes need to be bigger, but due to water quality concerns in the state, you could technically go through the process of requesting it, but they're, in conversations with local reps, they're just going to pretty much tell you no, that you can't upsize it. So what that would do is, to avoid having to go through the whole process with the CAMA at the state, is that there's like a buffer that they have that you need to do work. I think it was, if you're doing 70 linear feet outside of a normal water limit, so we wouldn't touch in that like 70 feet from like the edge of water to the pipe. And what we do is, as soon as we are technically able to do work without having to trigger that permit, we would put in a structure there that would be in a location that it pretty much has more of an opening, but it's in an area where we can try to direct the water that's then coming out of the system to kind of flow more naturally across the ground to the water. So what it is, you're pretty much putting a big structure there that as soon as you can do work, if the pipe is starting to really fill up and the water's trying to find some place to go, instead of it being underground and continuing to back up towards your parking lots or your inlets near your structures, anything like that, we would try to find a location between, property structures, and find a location within, I think in the specific area too, there was city-owned or town-owned property, I think near the gazebo, where you would look to see if, hey, instead of having flooding in a parking lot next to this building, could we try to force flooding elsewhere in a way where we could have it come out of the system in a grassy area where we can try to grade it to go a certain direction that we would like without impacting the portion of the pipe where the state is not going to let us touch.
You've already identified a spot because we have very limited space down there.
Yes, so I think it would, again, very preliminary, trying to identify specifically in that location something that is more downstream than the parking lot, and trying to put it on town property, which I think includes some of the parking lot at that location, but closer to the gazebo and the grass space. So trying to keep it downstream, closer to the water, between the parking lot and then the edge of water there.
Hey, John, obviously they have their top three, but with your team between the Public Works, Fire, and police that ride the roads every day through every type of weather, would you agree those are the main concerns? Or would you say there's another place that needs to be looked at that?
As far as, what we would like to see, obviously there's a price tag that comes along with these designs. So, the next step is, like she said, is to decide which one we want to focus on and put a grant application, together, and depending on how sophisticated it is, whether they do it or something we do in-house. And the three that they've mentioned, obviously, we would need to seek services for that. But,
I've got one quick question, too. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but so at Church Street and Front Street, during hurricanes or major storms, we have a backflow, from from the water coming from the intercoastal. Does this address that at all? And it's right there where Bait Bottle and Brew. I don't know how familiar you are with down there, but Bait Bottle and Brew, through the Looking Glass used to be there, a little town pavilion and all. It backs up tremendously bad during major storms there. Does this address that at all?
So the pipe infrastructure within the system that's proposed would not, but we are trying to, because it got to the point that no matter what you do from a pipe underground standpoint, they're never going to be big enough to handle or try to take in as much of that stuff that's just kind of coming up from a storm surge or perspective. So I know that's kind of where we're trying to get with the floodwater management pumping plan. I know, and that's one thing we didn't dig too much into on the report, but there have been other discussions from emergency management about, is there, is that deployable flood walls? Is there something else that could be done specifically in these emergency high water situations? We did model some of those scenarios, but again, it really is kind of comes down to trying to keep those separate, where we can try to address these kind of smaller storms, the everyday stuff, trying to help when it rains this summer, if it's not a hurricane, trying to help that as much as can, which we did see, especially in these smaller storm events where you're not getting as much of that tidal influence. But with the recommendations in the floodwater management discharge plan, trying to kind of set up these other things from like a hurricane perspective, king tide, something else like that, that's, we know continues to kind of plague some of the community residents and business owners in that area. But that's not included in that cost.
That's it. Nobody has any more? John, anything you wanted to add? Thank you, ladies, very much. That's probably above my head way too much, but especially all these data sheets. Good Lord, I don't know how you keep all that straight, but thank you for putting it all together. I guess what next step would be in your hands, I guess.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I heard that Mr. Justice said that he was going to treat you to lunch.
Yeah,
some
there you go,
earlier
yeah.
next time.
They're going back tonight. Then. Thank you, ladies, very much.
Just a sec, could we put up the summary slide one more time? As far as there it is, recommendations. What's the recommendations? There we go. I think we need to take that as a board and deliberate what do we actually control as a board, and then what you guys do as a staff, kind of draw the lines of labor and basically you're going to be asking guidance for us on these recommendations, I take it, right, John? Okay, the only thing I see right now that sticks out at me is formalized capital improvement plan. That's something that we control internally as a board. Most of that stuff up there is going to take staff time to decide, hey, do we need a consultant to come in? Or do we allocate more money to study this further? I don't know. But the only thing I see immediate is that thing right there, which we as a board decide, right? That's the 50,000 foot level stuff I'm talking about. So I think, yeah, there's probably a working group on this. And I got a couple ideas, and we've had guys like Rob Johnson come in and talk about what these individuals that live in these areas can actually do to help mitigate this problem too. And there's plenty of grant money that's easier for them to attain than it is probably for us to hire a consultant to try to obtain this grant money as well. And sort of like the other problems some of them have is community kind of gets together and we provide some education for the people that live in these areas. Invite them in and show them what they can do to mitigate this stuff through grant money and rain, like we've done with this town hall, rain recovery. And returning that, instead of washing this stuff to the river, we return it to the aquifer. And that's individual actions, but I'm not saying we can dictate that, but we can let people know if they want to improve the quality of life of their own neighborhoods, there's stuff that they can do and there's grant money out there for them. And this is why we had Mr. Johnson, you were here when he's come and given his briefs too. So that might be an avenue we might want to take a look at as a board, and you two as the manager. I don't know what your feeling on that is. But do you agree with me on what's in our territory up there as a board? What sticks out to you the most?
Number one is just to maintain an asset inventory program. She touched on it a little bit. We have something called Esri, which Jacob actually has one site license for that at the fire station. It has the capability. I'm not sure it's the full capability that we need to maintain that asset management system or not, but that would be something that we can do in-house is as we make changes to make improvements that over the long term in the future that someone can go back to and see what the original data showed, improvements we made or improvements that need to be made, we maintain it in-house. So that's number one is something we have sort of started working on, but the rest of that is up to us how far the board wants to go as far as formally, CIPs, you saw the cost of those projects. They're phenomenal. There's no way we're going to be able to do that without some outside grant funding sources. So with their help, we certainly, that would something we could, now that we have projects, not shovel ready, but the engine design is close, that we can now start going to funding sources, showing them that we have a need and perhaps secure some grant funding for some actual projects.
Because I'm sure your studies told us where this water is. You said it's rainfall, and it's rainfall in certain areas that accumulates, right? And because it's not, it's falling on areas that are impervious, right? So if we can help mitigate where it's coming from, and I think the last time we studied, we did a working group with Mr. Johnson. It was 60 inches of rain annually that fall here, on average. And each house that's 1,800 square feet, its rooftop ejects something like, I want to say, 12,500 gallons annually from that as well. And if you capture 90% of that and return it to the aquifer, it alleviate some of these problems, at least mitigate quite a bit. So I don't think it's the answer, but it's part of the answer, I think. The other answer is I don't know if you guys included rain mitigation that each of the citizens can do in these areas and stuff to help with that, or if you guys even bothered to take a look at that or not. Being that you're the water experts, because I'm not.
Okay, if nobody has any other questions, I guess it's Jacob's time for our annual report.
Mayor, Commissioners, citizens, thank you all. This is wrapping up 2025, an annual report. If you'll remember, in 2024, we went through the Community Risk Assessment Program with the Center of Public Safety Excellence. One of those items to move forward for continuous improvement, accountability, and transparency is to present this report and how we're doing. So just kind of to wrap up, our response agency call volume, our overall total for last year was 1,493 incidents. 1,278 of them were within our primary response area, so the incorporated city limits of Swansboro and the unincorporated ETJ jurisdiction that we have contracted with the county. Of those, we received aid 51 times. We provided the remaining amount of calls to other agencies. So 215 of those were to our what we call secondary response areas. The emergency management and the other agencies down at the bottom were state deployment to the Black Cove fire, and then the other agencies are agencies that we don't typically respond automatically to, like Pumpkin Center. We might have been attached to a call in Richlands or something like that. So those were 7 of our incidents. In January, we switched from the NIFRS, which was a fire reporting system, national fire reporting, to the National Emergency Reporting System. So the code changes and what the incident type were, and we tried to align them with the new one here. So this breaks down our call type by category. So mutual aid or aid given is not necessarily going across the state or the nation. That's going from a county that's our primary county to another one. So 50 times we went to the Western Carteret area. We had 111 fire type incidents. That could be anything from a building to wildland to vehicle. Hazardous situations, 23. So that could be a gas odor, electrical lines down, or anything deemed hazardous. We had 2 specific law enforcement support calls, medical illness, medical trauma. Those are the higher volume that we have. 527 illness. We had 327 calls that were deemed traumas, and then 145 other medical calls that don't really have a generic category. 3 incidents we were attached to for either a wrong incident or there was no incident found. We had 2 general public service calls, 125 fire alarm or alarm activations, 64 good intent public service calls, and 114 rescue incidents, which include anything from motor vehicle accidents to elevator rescues or water incidents. We're searching for boats. Just a little breakdown per month. July was our busiest month of all with 148 incidents. The lowest, I believe, was November at 109. Nope, February 105, which 28 days. By the day of the week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday seems to be our busiest days, and Sunday everybody stays at home getting ready for the week. So it's 184 incidents were on a Sunday, and the highest being the 230 of Thursday and Saturday. This is a map of our primary response area, just showing you all of the incidents. This is on our GIS account that the stormwater is entered in on, so we can do stuff like this with incident calls, mapping out everything. And this shows you a heat map of where those incidents were concentrated. The blue is the city limits, the green is the county jurisdiction that we respond to. As you can see, the heaviest of the heat map is concentrated on that Highway 24 corridor. The heaviest yellow area in the blue, that's about the Pelican Circle, Hampton region. And the yellow up in the green, that's actually the landings, as much as we go there. So the 90th percentile, and this is where it gets really interesting because we have to break all the data down and go through and find outliers, which our outliers are deemed on incidents that we have a prolonged, either we're tied up on an overlapping incident where it might take us 5 or more minutes to get from that incident to another one. Outliers also include calls that we might have been attached to by error that have times, so we have to filter through all of that. But all of our incidents together, a call handling time, which is from the time someone dials 911 to a unit is dispatched, is 1 minute and 34 seconds. We don't have control over that. That's the dispatch center. We work with them, and you'll see on the next slide of how we've actually worked with them enough to drop that drastically.
Hey, Jacob.
Yep.
You've improved over the last year total time, though, I've noticed that.
Yes, so that's the next
By
slide.
a minute or more.
Yeah, oh yeah. In some, it's more than a couple minutes. But that comes from the communications we have with the communication center, the new director, and a bunch of different factors that I'll kind of sum up moving forward. When we take the outliers out of it, we drop to 1 minute and 32. When we look at just the first arriving unit, the call handling is 1 minute 30. Between day and nighttime, which their shifts vary, we have 1 minute 24 for day and 1 minute 41 for night. Turnout time for all incidents is 2 minutes and 14 seconds. That's a little higher than we want. Less the outliers is 211. For that first arriving unit, it's 2 minutes and 4 seconds. Daytime, we have a turnout time of 147 and nighttime of 228. Travel time, that's from the time we check en route to the time we arrive at the scene. All incidents is 6 minutes and 38 seconds. Outliers excluded is 6 minutes and 6 seconds. That first arriving unit is 5:45. Daytime is 5:33 and nighttime is 6:11. The total response time is 8 minutes and 37 seconds. Outliers excluded is 8 minutes and 19 seconds. That first arriving is 8:09. Daytime is 7:31 and nighttime is 8:46. From last year, we've dropped 50 seconds on that alarm handling. That just comes from the communication with the communication center. We've dropped 1 minute and 31 on our turnout time. That comes from factors of we've included CAD into our trucks now, so instead of us having the human component of waiting for the dispatcher to put our unit en route, we can actually do it from the truck. The travel time, proximity of the call, that can be any kind of factors. And then that total response time from the time that somebody calls 911 to the time we get there, we've dropped by over 2 minutes. At daytime, we've dropped to 13, and we've gone a little bit up on the response time at nighttime, but we're working with that. Some of the shortfalls, the overlapping incidents, that kind of contributes to our outlier policy is anything over greater than 5 minutes in turnout time, and that's because we're not penalizing the guys, but we still want to capture the data when we're tied up on a primary incident and myself or another chief's coming from home or we're leaving somewhere that's not necessarily, so that's a big factor. It also comes to where those overlapping incidents, which we had the longest delay of which we were on scene until we could go to another call was 32 minutes and 47 seconds. That was a call that we were tied up and another higher priority incident got dispatched, so it diverted the unit that was coming to us, which happens frequently, but we're working with the EMS system to help improve that. And then incidents, delayed response, so off-duty chief officers or after hours, we're coming back from home and just living kind of a prolonged area from the town and the station. Had some system status entry issues, so like if multiple calls are going on in the dispatchers, because there's only one over fire, if they get tied up trying to enter multiple units into the call, it may be a few minutes before they actually put us en route, but we have mitigated that by getting the software through the dispatch center that we can check our own units en route. Units getting diverted to higher priorities based on the EMD code of what people say when they call 911. And then data entry, the way the unit identifier system is, we get attached to calls because the way that it's heard on the dispatcher's end multiple times, it could be of inaccuracy. Day versus night, so the station design we're currently at, the proximity of our sleeping quarters to apparatus bay, it might seem minuscule, but it is a factor in our turnout times after 7 p.m. And then a station alerting system that's also in the back. And we've got a new CAD system that gives us a pre-alert prior to the call being dispatched. So we're hoping that will help cut down on some times. And then travel time, just the station location kind of being decentralized from that primary response area for the whole area. So what we've done to help improve and how we've got these times down, we've worked with the communication center to identify some areas of improvement. We've equipped the apparatus with dispatch software. We've obtained that computer-aided software for the station. We've started doing a little bit better data analytics with the software that comes directly from the CAD system. So we're getting everything from the dispatch centers. And then radio benchmarks and timestamps that software captures. So if we're on scene and we're marking at patient time, it's a little bit more accurate than having to estimate on incident reports. Our data tracking and benchmarking is also improving. Moving into our community risk reduction program, which is the fire inspection side. We did 351 total fire inspections last year, or plan reviews. Those come from regular annual fire inspections based on the fire code. They could be first inspections or re-inspections. 7 new businesses, had 114 commercial hood inspections, 4 special event tents. We had 2 that just popped up. Either somebody complained about a fire code violation or had a question or concern, or if we go to like a fire alarm activation that the system is malfunctioning and requires testing, that's what that one could be also. And then 21 business construction plan reviews. That could be anything from TRC site plans, new construction, or them submitting like alteration to a fire alarm system. Our community risk reduction programs for the mitigation or fire life safety education. One thing I didn't include in here was our first inaugural safety town, which we're planning again for this year with the help of Parks and Rec. But phase 2 of our Hammocks Beach trail marker signs, which that's a picture of the sign right there with the 3 agencies at the top that took part in this. If you go out to Hammocks Beach and you're walking on the walking trails, or if you go over to Bear Island, you should see these. They are also tagged in our CAD system as address points. So if you call 911, we're able to triangulate you a lot quicker. The ICW waterway markers, we've gone in conjunction with North Topsail, U.S. Coast Guard, Camp Lejeune. We've mapped out the entire ICW. We've got all of the buoy markers that we have also turned into address points so that everybody from Carteret to Pender County can be pinpointed if we ever have a water rescue incident. High hazard occupancy training, we conducted fire extinguisher training with all our high hazard occupancies, from the Hampton to the cottages to the landings, high speed gear, just to give that education and help with ISO. And then working with Hammock Farms and Hammocks Beach to do wildland urban interface mitigation, so controlled burns. We've mapped out the fire lanes with Mr. Hamrick and getting ready to start that planning. So we've been pretty active with the risk reduction programs and to mitigate hazards around the area. For the agency and our accomplishments, we are working with Coastal to do a PSA contract, which is a revenue source, and we're piloting it for the rest of the paid agencies in the county, and that's going pretty well. 5 personnel have completed the fire academy. 4 has completed their EMT basic. 1 graduated from the Fire Rescue Management Institute. We've completed 3 acquired structure burns, and all of our full-time staff maxed out their facility train hours, and that was in partnership with Camp Lejeune. So pretty busy with getting our training and getting people ready for the ISO inspection we're anticipating this year. And with that, I'm wrapped up. If y'all got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
I got a question about water-related rescue. So currently, you had to go all the way over to Cedar Point to put the boat in, I guess?
There are Hammocks Beach.
Okay. Is there any possibility somewhere down the road we would have it on a lift, or is that a possibility to look where we wouldn't have to do that and just run straight to the boat and put it in the water?
That's a y'all thing. I would love that.
Where would our new dock wouldn't be conducive to that we're working on, would it?
The width to get a dock in with the riparian rights, the buffer. Yeah, we looked at that, and it just wouldn't fit in the small area that we have to work with.
So, if I got the numbers right, on your almost 1,500 calls, 527 were for illness.
Mhm.
Total for the 3, 999. So that's like 60 to 70% of your calls are medical and not fire related, right?
We have a high percentage of medical calls, yes, sir.
Jacob, I just want to comment, your last slide, just want to give props to you and your team. I mean, the aggressive way of seeking training and certifications, I think it demonstrates a ready force in support of the community. And I think that's reinforced and demonstrated with your reduced response times that you showed this evening from last year to this year. So you and your team, keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Hey, Chief, I know a while back you discussed it, and I didn't see it captured, but 11 missed calls.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate what that details, and if there's a fix out there? And what I'm getting at is, you missed it, but I assume somebody else picked it up.
Yep.
But what could have fixed that? Is that more personnel? Is that, if you could discuss that?
It is. So, I mean, we're already experiencing it now. We've had just today 4 incidents. We missed 1 while on another call during the daytime. So it's the frequency of overlapping incidents and having the available staff. I mean, we're a 1-call department, so if we're on one, it's really hard to mitigate the other incident. Luckily, they've all been related to a medical, I mean, that's not a good thing to have, but they're all medically related. So EMS is typically responding to those other ones, and depending on the EMD code, will help divert units. We've got a real good partnership with Onslow County Fire Rescue. They've got a new division head that we've been working with. And if it's something we can't handle, we're trying to get a more regional partnership of answering mutual aid and resource allocation. So the quick fix is mutual aid, but if we're mutual aiding them in, that leaves their area uncovered. So we're trying to work through some plans on what really could happen. Increased staffing and given that extra availability of a resource is a long-term, but really it's a all-encompassing plan that we're trying to work through right now.
Thank you.
I do want to just say, I appreciate the partnership you're developing with the college and with the county. With the colleges, the community colleges getting ready to write us a letter of support that will help us in funding and looking for grants and all. So that's a good relationship that you've built with them, and thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Also, too, I just want you to know that people who do not live around here, when they come visit me, they say, boy, your fire department's busy. And I'm even talking down off of 24 in Carteret County, close to Moorhead. So people know you guys are working your tail off, and I know I appreciate it. Thank everybody.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I've only got one question, Chief, and I probably should ask you this offline, but I'll ask you in a public meeting. How is retention going for you right now?
Good. With the salary increase, we got 2 vacancies. One was going to another opportunity at a very large system that we wouldn't have been able to compete with. The other one, we're moving in the right direction. We've got applicants in now. We run the process this week. We're doing well.
Okay, I guess.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for everything you do.
Just remember that was quicker than PD's.
All right, Sonia. So Sonia's up next with the monthly financial report. No?
It's hard to see.
Public hearing. We'd have a public hearing was next, right? No public hearing, though. And so, okay, it is Sonia. Okay. Just making sure. Going down the line.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I will be presenting the financial report as of February 28, 2026. And here is your 2-year comparison with encumbrances, and your total excess of revenues over expenditures were $819,519. And here is your actual, and this is without encumbrances, and your total excess of revenues over expenditures were $956,482. And here's a summary of expenditures by department. And overall, the total expenditures are at 55.39%, which is 11.25% less than the monthly projected of 66.64%. So as you can see, we do have some departments that are a little bit over that, but that's whether it's an annual due, like your non-departmental, which I say this all the time, the annual property and liability, there's lump sum amounts coming out of some of these departments at a one-time transaction. And of course, your emergency management, I stated this last time, it's at 87.1, and that's because of Winter Storm Gianna, which I will be coming back for a budget amendment for that anyway. It'd be very minimal. That's pretty much about it for that. And then here's your 2-year comparison of your Stormwater Enterprise Fund with encumbrances included, and your total excess of revenues over expenditures are $71,678. Of course, still working on projects. And this is your 2-year comparison of your solid waste enterprise fund, and your total excess of revenues over expenditures were $6,859. And your summary of the town's current debt and balances as of February 28th. There's no change here, but will be this next coming month for March. And then this is your summary of your cash accounts and current balances as of February 2026. And as you can see, the TD Bank interest is going down little by little. And then here is your grant update as of February 28th. Any questions?
Do you have any concern?
That, this is for John. Oh, go ahead.
Do you have any areas of concern?
Not at this moment, nope.
I'm not displeased with the 3.8% return, but it has gone down. Have we made a phone call to other competitors or see if they're interested in servicing that?
It's
I
a
know it's tough.
long process.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly can, but I was going to wait just a little longer and just see, because it's a long process.
I know there was more than generous and stuff, and it was actually the board, but I just want to see if it's worth the time to spend 5 minutes on the phone calling some competitors and
I mean, I
saying,
can.
I got like $9 million. Are you interested in giving me a better return than I've currently got? You know, that really short. And if they're not, great, but what's it hurt to ask?
Yeah.
Do we have a very long-term relationship with TD Bank? I mean, so that's a lot of, that we don't really.
It took a long time to even get that.
Yeah.
I'm just watching.
Do your due diligence.
I get it.
Cameron, did you have something?
I already have.
Good?
All right, thank you. All right, so we'll move to future agenda topics. Lisa?
Good evening. As of tonight, it is confirmed that your budget meeting will be on April 1st. I'll be sending out that notice tomorrow, okay? For your upcoming regular meetings for the 14th or the 28th of April, you will see some special event applications come forward. The also county tax reevaluation presentation that has been secured for the 14th.
So somebody from the county is coming?
Yes,
Do you
sir.
know who that's going to be?
I do not. Kevin Turner, we believe. We'll have our pickleball court updates as well as Parks and Rec's end of year report and visitor center renovation project. Further information will be coming for that. Did any other agenda items need to be discussed for inclusion at either of those meetings?
Yeah, go ahead.
Time or not, but when it gets approved and they come do it, do they just show up and do their thing and you get an email? Or is that something that they contact you and do? And the reason I'm saying is there's certain times down there that, for example, 7 to about 9 in the morning and 3 to 6 p.m. that's issues in front of the middle school. That is crazy. Due to stoplights only long enough to turn 3 vehicles at a time. Is that something they come to us and we just play the best part of that?
I put in a ticket
I know you
basically
have
with, when
process work.
you do that, they give you a control number and they've taken my name, my email address, and my phone number, and usually when they have come to a resolution or have an answer to provide on the ticket, they email and/or call me. I haven't heard anything, which I assume is because I reported 4 different intersections. So they're probably rationing that out. We're looking through it, but I have not heard anything back. But they do have a ticket out
So
there.
Jumpo's also looking at that as well. So that was the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I could always provide him that information. I can add that to my ticket if you want me to. That's fine. If you want to send me what times you want them to specifically hone in on, I could add that to it. I put it for like a overall for all 4 intersections. Like there's an overall inconsistency being reported. I didn't specify any times.
Couple of recognitions. Still I'm gonna push for the cadet that helped. If we could recognize him.
We will be recognizing him. However, he has to finish his actual Eagle Scout recognition
Okay.
before we move forward
Oh,
to
okay.
do him.
Great. Okay. And then
Is that not different? Okay, I'm
our
sorry.
perennial swimmer came in second this year, but still I think that's worthy of recognizing because he's been first the last 2 years, and so he still is at that high level. So if that's appropriate to any students that need recognition from the school would be great. Do we need to talk about the skate park? Is that appropriate at this time to see what we're going to do with that? Would that be an agenda item or would that just be a one-on-one type thing?
We can give you an update on where we are with our request.
Because the reason I asked, I have a gentleman reached out to me and he might be willing to take that, the apparatus that's out there. I don't know what we're tied to with that and what our limitations are.
If or when we're given the consent to remove the equipment by the original grant funding agency, the board will have to decide on you can't give it away.
Yeah.
You'll have to decide how you want to
Dispose of it.
dispose of it as surplus property.
Would that be an appropriate agenda thing or we're not quite there yet, are we? Okay.
I can
Isn't
add
that
it to the
an-
list
an-
of future agenda items.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yes.
Ma'am.
Do we need to, or should we consider doing a workshop for this storm master? Educated in, consider our resources. We just attended that one for base. They had grants that I think might be worth exploring.
We could look into having a workshop after the plan is finalized. So sometime after April 10th. Does that sound good? And it'll still have to go to the state for approval. So I guess once that comes back, it would be best to then see about scheduling that. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so no items removed from consent, and there's no one signed up for the second part of public comment. Does anybody want to make a comment? No, then Mr. Barlow will present us with the manager's report. And comment.
Mayor, a good evening. Mayor, a few moments ago, you asked me about an idea of a boat lift for the fire department. Yeah, that makes Jacob very happy. But my comment was just, I looked at Main Street. I don't know if you were talking about any other water access points that the town has, By Park or Moore Street or Church Street, I was just talking about Main Street because we're just going through that repair of that
And I
document.
wonder
That's
if
the only
Pokey-
place we looked at, confirmed that we can't fit a boat lift there. I have not, or I'm not aware of us actually looking into the feasibility of any of those other access points we have for a boat lift. So that would be something we could do.
I wonder if Pogies would be willing to, he's
Or
pretty,
lease from a private owner. Yeah, that could also be an option.
Our new dock doesn't accommodate that.
you got riparian rights, did you say? The new dock?
Main Street?
Yeah.
No, we do not have riparian rights right from the property owners yet, no.
The property owner.
We're gonna need them to, yeah, we're gonna need them to waive that for this to work.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. You good? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to bring you up to date on a couple of things. I've mentioned these in the past. The board did give us authorization to enter into contract negotiations with Bob at the design build firm for the EOC and public safety building. We're working with them. They've given me a draft. I've given that to Raz to read it as an attorney to make sure we're using the right language to make sure that the town is covered in respect to, I'm sure Bob has got it written to their satisfaction, but we need to come to some meeting of the minds that we're both happy of the contents of the contract. So I've got Raz working on it. And one other aspect of the project, and I've mentioned this before, is I think it'd be really, due to the size and complexity of this project, that it would be beneficial for us to use something as what's called project advisory services. And I've mentioned that to the past to you. Again, due to the size of the construction, the level of funding for this project, it would require us to RFQ it. So I've prepared the RFQ. Elisa has it. She's got it ready to be put on online this week. Hopefully the timeline is middle of April 15th, to have submittals in many of these firms that specialize in this type of service, and by April 28th have a recommendation to you to somebody I'd like for you to enter into a contract with, provide that third-party service. I think it'd be really important to get them in early as we're putting the contract together with Bobbitt, to have this firm here to give us another set of eyes as we work through this entire build of the project. So that'll be forthcoming in April, and I hope to at the same time have a Bobbitt draft to you that we would like to recommend, so we can get all this kind of off the ground at the same time. Last month I also mentioned that we did submit the application to Onslow County TDA for additional funding, $21,000 for funding for the renovation of the visitor center. We also have submitted an application to the Swansboro TDA. They meet April the 9th. Our Swansboro TDA meets to consider applications. Anna, I think, has got 2 applications into them for that same, and Justin is submitting one for some funding assistance for a new Christmas tree at the at Pogie's. The old one is getting a little bit worn out, so Justin's going to ask for TDA to help the town buy a new Christmas tree. So we'll know in April if our TDA is going to give us the additional $21,000 in addition to the 30 they committed several years ago. What we won't know is from Onslow County. They don't do it like we do. They meet once a year for any request for their TDA, and they do it during their budget cycle. So we may not know until June, when they adopt their budget, whether they're going to fund our project. Now, we can't enter into a contract for renovation of the visitor center if we don't have all the funding in place. So my thought is to ask you all if you would allocate the additional funds that we've asked for from Onslow County, assuming we're going to get that money, and then reimburse ourselves that $21,000 if we get the Onslow County money. And if we do that and move on, and we don't get it, then we can we afford? You would have to, it would have to come from fund balance. Yes, we have 21,000 in fund balance, but that would be a decision you all have to make is if you think that's appropriate expenditure of it.
So my thoughts on it was,
If we
Can we
don't have
make a
all the funding in
motion?
place, I just don't, I mean, we can wait till June to put this project under
No.
contract,
yeah.
but I'm
Can we
trying
make
to,
a motion to move forward with that?
no, it's not
I'm
on
just
the,
gonna- I'm gonna speak.
we'll bring it back.
Can I just say one thing? On the visitor center, as a citizen, I go down there, start Memorial Day weekend, watch the music, all that kind of stuff, you know. I'd sure like to see that thing, you know, up and functional by Memorial Day, you know, if it's at all possible. If Sonia, the finance person back there, is saying, I think we can do this no matter what the county does.
Well,
You know.
I think that it works good if we wait till April the
I'm just
14th,
speaking as a
our regular
citizen.
meeting, because TDA meets on the 9th. So we'll know if Swansboro TDA is going to appropriate those additional 21,000. If they do, then I would feel comfortable coming to you and say, hey, we've got everything we need except the county piece of the, would you be willing to put that money up front and let us proceed on with the project? So that's my plan.
Hey, John, as part of that discussion, then can we verify with the county that if we execute a course of action like that, we would not negate the ability to get that 21,000
That's a very
from
good
them?
question. That's a very good question, whether if we proceed on with it, would they assume that we didn't need it?
Exactly.
I have that concern, but it's one we will have to ask also County. I'm sure they, you know, I know they can't, you know, they can't guarantee that they're going to award it. So, but in the event they do, would they be willing to enter into that type of arrangement?
So, next meeting.
So, yeah, so we'll wait on that until the 14th then, after we hear from
Yeah,
our
I will,
TDA.
regardless of where we're at, I'll report again what's going on. Yeah.
So we're all clear on direction.
Yes.
Okay.
Get it done.
That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
John, just one question. I know we briefly talked about it in regards to the public safety building. Is it still
Oh, sure.
stand that by 30 June, we have to do something with that $3 million grant money, and is that contingent on the state doing some things they need to do that would help facilitate giving us an extension?
That is correct. The conditions on the grant, the state put on the town, actually, there are a number of towns that receive state construction and infrastructure grant money. 20 or 30 towns are got the same fund during that same cycle, and all those grants are expiring June the 30th. And there's about, I saw the list, there's about 30 other towns that are in the same boat that haven't used all the money. We've all asked for an extension. Now, it's my understanding, I know the mayor has had a lot of conversation with our local delegation, Gable and Senator Lazara, and in fact, I know they've attached it to a local bill. I don't know which one, but I do not believe it's gone to the floor for a vote, but it's still out there. I don't know when they'll reconvene to take up discussion on this particular bill, but I think they've attached all the towns to this bill for seeking the extension beyond June 30 to spend what's left of our $3 million. We used $1.3 million to purchase the land, so whatever remaining balance we have, you know, it is set to expire June the 30th.
Can I add something to that, or is that appropriate?
Sure.
Okay. So in talking, like John has said, there's a number of communities and nonprofits that have gotten that money. I know of one particular nonprofit here in Swansboro, and their expirations, and so they we're all in the same boat. And my understanding was it was going to be attached, like you said, to a bill. And they're going into short session this week, I believe it is.
Is it this week?
Yeah, and they were going to start reviewing. This is all verbal. This is not finalized or anything like that. It's just,
Okay.
you know, talking to people. And so hopefully it would be nice if we got some kind of answer this week, but I don't know how fast the short session will work and what all transpires in it. But I know they're going to talk about it, like you said, with a number of other communities. So,
Right.
To your point, Mayor, Tim and I went to Senator Lazar's town hall about a month or so ago, and he said the same thing. I was just wondering if there was some new information available. So hopefully we do get some new information shortly.
I keep getting the same answer, and I've inquired numerous times and feel like we have a lot of support from Senator Lazar and Representative Gable. I feel like we've got, I don't know how we could get much more support from them. They're backing us 100%. So hopefully with that said, you know, a lot of it's been held up in their budget, you know, too. You know, they've been operating on the old budget all year long. So hopefully they can come to a budget this year. But that's not us, that's them.
Good. Thank you.
That's all right. Anybody else? All righty. So now we move to board comments. So Tim, well, no, let's do this. Tamara, you want to go first?
I do.
Okay, you go first.
Thank you, staff.
We'll switch it up a little bit and go this way.
Thank you. Sonia, thank you. If you do have time next week, I'd like to discuss the stormwater fund with you so I can get a better understanding of that. Chief Randall, thank you for your report. Y'all are always making improvements. We all appreciate your team. I know you've built a lot of great relationships with the county and base, and always making improvements. Really appreciate you.
Wayne?
Hey, thanks to those here tonight. Thanks to those watching online. Thanks to everyone who answered my many questions this week that came from our 200-page agenda. I appreciate it. I appreciate the quick turn on all those answers. Thank you so much. Just 2 points. Went to an ONWASA meeting last week. Really nothing new to report, just to reinforce the 2 action items that impact Swansboro. The wastewater sewer lines that are going from Swansboro to Piney Green are still on track for completion the middle of the summer. Everything looks to be moving in the right direction. And then ONWASA is in receipt of a $175,000 grant for the Mount Pleasant pumping station relocation. They actually got that money from the North Carolina FEMA department in North Carolina. So they're in the process of working with the state to acquire those funds and then to develop the action plan to relocate that pumping station. And just one other item I just wanted to pass along. We're about 30 days out. Saturday, April 26th is the Swansboro Historic Homes Tour. Tickets go on sale the first week of April online at swansborohistoricalassociation.org, and also they'll be sold the day of the event at the Heritage Center. It's shaping up to really a really good event in concert with our 250th birthday. So please come on out and experience a little bit more and learn a little bit more about the historic nature of our town. Thank you.
And they can certainly use volunteers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to also give an update. Bill and I, at the last Jumbo meeting, Jacksonville, during the storm of all time, we got something approved that people have been asking about for a long time, and that's a crossing down at Front Street in 24. So from the summertime, or whenever, in their words, when it warms up, they're going to be doing an evaluation survey type, seeing how many people cross, or attempting to cross, how many people are going under the bridge to get to the other side. Called the Hawk system. So looks like it's going to be coming. They put it up as a safety issue. So I wouldn't be too excited because it's going to be a while just because of the process, how it has to work. So hopefully they can do it early summer. I know talking to 2 guys from DOT, after the evaluation's done, maybe a year or 2, and it might get completed. So that's some good news because I know we've asked about that for a long time. Staff, thanks for everything. I know sometimes we can be difficult. It seems just by the sheer volume, all of us
up here throwing stuff at you, and you always come through. Thanks for everybody who showed up, and we'll see everybody April 1st for the budget meeting.
Busy week. I'm sorry I didn't stop by at least once this week, John. By the way, I wanted to talk to you a couple of things, but hold for later. Everyone notices the color of the sky out there and stuff. The base is doing controlled burns, in case you had any curiosity whatsoever on that one. Because I saw on social media today, people are kind of like there's ash falling on my driveway and stuff like that. But I don't know if you all guys are aware of that, but that's what's happening out there. Yeah. Chief Randall, excellent job, moving in the right direction. Response times is where the citizens feel it the most, obviously. And Sonia, great job on the budget report once again. Look forward to that every 2 months. I do. Every year you get, the revenues to outlays and stuff is obviously looking better. And I think I'm looking forward to April 1st and getting this workshop done and stuff, and just giving you the guidance that you guys need to keep delivering. And I appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Appreciate everybody showing up. Chief Randall, appreciate the annual report. Great job.
Okay. Well, again, reiterate what everybody else said. Thanks to the staff and departments that everything you do. We are getting a little bit of traction with Jumbo. They're very receptive. We've had some traffic light issues that, the chiefs called me about, and they've had somebody come down in a really timely manner to take a look. The problem with that is it's a state, and by the time they get an engineer or somebody to come down and respond to a traffic light that goes out, it takes a long time. They're talking about looking at tying it in with the last light at Piney Green Road and tying it all the way down. So that way, if there is an issue, the chief can call and they'll have somebody out of Jacksonville come on a quicker time frame. Is what they told me anyway. I was kind of touching on what you were talking about with the synchronization. We went to the elected officials lunch on the base with John went and Tim and Wayne, Jeff. We were all there. It was a pretty good meeting. It was just a high level view of things. It talked about community relations more than anything, really, and the impact that the base has. I didn't realize that it has a $4.8 billion impact on our community. So they are looking to, reach out and be community partners with the surrounding areas. So we have a good opportunity there. I think, Jacob, you work quite a bit with them out there on base with their fire department. And speaking of which, we are getting a letter of support from the community college that Jacob's worked on from Dr. Heatherly is going to write for us, and so that's a great thing. Chamber breakfast the other day, Chamber of Commerce, they had Chris Barnes, the county superintendent of schools, talked about their planning. He, when I asked him about plans and how he felt about our student levels at our schools, I didn't get a real clear answer. That I did point out to him it'd be great to have a new middle school somewhere in the general area, but he said there was thoughts of doing one around the Piney Green area sometime down the road, but that wouldn't be Swansboro, but it would probably take some of our people to their school. We had a lunch also with Mr. Barlow, Tim Foster, our new Mr. Eaton, our new acting county commissioner, John Davis, and myself, and we talked a lot about cooperation in the county and Swansboro working closely together. There was talk of EMS, fire strategy, the visitor center, and what little bit is left of Joe-Ed. So I think that was a good lunch. I've had a couple of informal conversations with Mr. Eaton since. He's going to be moving to Swansboro down Queens Creek Road, so he'll get to see firsthand our one of our main thoroughfares. And that's pretty much all I have. Just thanks again for everybody that's involved in the community, and stepping up and helping us, try to move the town forward. With that, nobody else has anything to say. I'd like to get a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So adjourned. Thank y'all for coming out. Okay. That's what I say. Oh, okay, cool. I might, wait a minute, I might have, is it? Hey, are you gonna give me a list that? Let me see if I can. El Chino. Yeah. Wait, Sam Bland's at El Chino, right? Let me see if I got your, I might have that phone number, Doug.
Need some of them meatballs.
Wait, I got your work number. Wait a minute. Let me see. 0131. I got you.
I'm strapped to my desk in the afternoons now, do academic standing.
Oh, boy. What is that?
In the morning, I have to get around and see the units and the